Part 1. Elijah Stovall and the long, quiet art of not giving up. Hey guys, tonight, let's slow things down a bit. Dim the lights. Put the phone face down. Get comfortable. Tonight, we are not storming castles or poisoning popes. We are doing something far more exhausting. We are attending a family disaster. A modern one, with lawyers and minivans and people who say things like, "I was just protecting my son," while actively ruining everyone's life. So let's begin with Elijah Stovall. Elijah is 67 years old, which is the age where your knees make decisions before your brain does. He is a grandfather, a retired man, the kind of man who wakes up early for no reason anymore, drinks coffee he doesn't even enjoy, and stares out windows like they're telling him secrets. For most of his life, Elijah believed in two things: work hard and take care of your family, which, historically speaking, is a belief system that almost always gets punished. Elijah had one daughter, Maya. She was his whole world once, the kind of kid who asked too many questions, the kind who cried when animals got hurt in movies, the kind who grew up believing people were mostly good. That belief would not age well. Maya married a man named Marcus Thorne. Marcus was charming in the way that feels rehearsed. He smiled too quickly. He spoke just a little too confidently about things he did not fully understand. And he had a mother named Beatrice, which, right away, tells you everything you need to know. Beatrice Thorne was not a villain in the dramatic sense. She didn't monologue. She didn't shout. She didn't throw wine glasses. She specialized in quiet disapproval, the kind that sits in the room like stale air, the kind that makes you feel wrong without ever raising her voice. She did not like Maya. She tolerated her, which is often worse. And when Maya married Marcus, something inside Elijah snapped. Not loudly, not publicly, just enough to do lasting damage. He disapproved. He said things he should not have said, and instead of fixing it, he doubled down, because of course he did. They stopped talking. Years passed. Elijah's wife died, which hollowed him out in ways he didn't know how to explain. Grief makes people do strange math. When Maya reached out again, older, tired, already a mother herself, Elijah answered, not because the past was healed, but because guilt eventually grows louder than pride. Maya had a son, Malik. Malik was gentle, sensitive, overwhelmed by noise and chaos, a child who felt the world too loudly, and Elijah loved him immediately, the way grandparents do, with fewer expectations and more patience than they ever had with their own kids. Maya was struggling. Marcus wanted stability, or at least the appearance of it. So Elijah did what men like him do. He opened his checkbook. He took his late wife's inheritance. He took his retirement savings, money that was supposed to become quiet years and modest comfort, and he turned it into a condo. Not in his name. That would have required foresight. It went into Marcus's name, because Marcus handled things, because Marcus said he would take care of Maya, because family, right? Yes, family. Which brings us to the eviction. One day, Maya came home, and the locks were changed, which is a bold move in any marriage, especially when children are involved. Marcus and Beatrice had decided something, quietly, without Maya. Maya was no longer welcome. Malik was no longer welcome. But the newborn baby girl, Aaliyah, she stayed. Because apparently babies can be selectively welcome. Maya stood outside her own home with a diaper bag, a confused child, and no plan. She slept in a van. This is where Elijah finds her. Not through destiny, not through dramatic coincidence, but through the slow, guilt-driven habit of checking places he thought she might be. A gas station parking lot, late at night. A van that smelled of fear and fast food. Malik curled up, trying not to cry. Maya exhausted in a way that goes beyond tired. And Elijah understood something very clearly. This was his fault too. because money given without protection is just a future problem waiting patiently. Elijah did not yell. He did not collapse. He did not have a movie moment. He did what older men do when rage settles into resolve. He got quiet. He listened. He asked questions. He remembered dates. He asked where the paperwork was. And then he called someone he hadn't spoken to in years, Xavier Vance. Xavier was a former coworker, back when Elijah still believed work could solve most things. Xavier became a lawyer, which is what happens when someone enjoys arguments but prefers air conditioning. Xavier listened, slowly, carefully, and then he said the most comforting sentence in the English language: "We can work with this," which is lawyer for someone messed up. Over the next days, Elijah and Maya did something very boring and very powerful. They gathered evidence: bank transfer receipts, dates, amounts. Money trails are not exciting, but they are persuasive. They spoke to a nurse named Tasha, who had seen Beatrice speak to Maya like she was a problem, not a patient. They spoke to Mr. Holloway, a neighbor who noticed Malik was always clean, always fed, always loved, which is apparently notable when someone is trying to prove you are unfit. Marcus did not take this well. He claimed Maya was unstable. He claimed postpartum depression made her dangerous. He claimed Malik's needs were proof she couldn't cope, which is a fascinating argument because it requires you to publicly admit you abandoned your own children with someone you now call incapable. Social services arrived, because of course they did. They asked questions, they looked around, they observed Malik clinging to his mother like she was gravity itself. They left. No removal, no emergency action, just a report that did not say what Marcus wanted it to say. Court came next. Courtrooms are strange places. Everyone pretends they are calm. No one actually is. Elijah sat quietly, hands folded, watching his money turn into words on paper. Xavier spoke calmly, presented facts, let Marcus talk himself into contradictions. The judge listened, which is all you ever really hope for. The ruling came gently, almost boringly. Custody to Maya, immediate return of Aaliyah, financial compensation for the condo. No shouting, no dramatic collapse, just consequences. Marcus looked smaller afterward. Beatrice looked offended, which frankly was her default setting. Months passed. Maya moved into a smaller place, which felt enormous compared to a van. Malik attended therapy, slowly learning the world did not always explode. Aaliyah slept in her mother's arms, where she should have been all along. Elijah downsized his life, but grew something else: perspective. Tonight's story is not about kings or crowns, but it is about power, and how the quiet kind, patience, documentation, love, tends to outlast the loud kind. So take a breath, settle in, because this family's history is just getting started. Part 2. Part 2. Marcus Thorne discovers paperwork is a form of violence. All right, let's ease back in. Stretch your legs, adjust the pillow. If you drifted off a little during Part 1, that's fine. History and family law wait patiently. When we left Elijah Stovall, he was learning a late-life lesson that many men learn only once. Money is loud, paperwork is louder, and Marcus Thorne was about to discover this the hard way. Now, Marcus had always believed himself to be a reasonable man, which is usually a warning sign. He believed he was logical, organized, in control. These beliefs were largely unsupported by reality. Marcus grew up in a household where his mother, Beatrice, treated certainty as a personality trait. If Beatrice believed something, that belief became gravity. Disagreement was not discussed, it was diagnosed. Marcus learned early that the easiest way to survive was to agree quickly and act decisively. Reflection was unnecessary. Doubt was weakness. So when Elijah's money arrived years earlier, quiet transfers, clean numbers, Marcus did not see generosity, he saw permission. Permission to manage, permission to decide, permission to exclude. Because ownership to Marcus was not about contribution, it was about whose name was typed correctly. And when things became inconvenient, when Maya questioned him, when Malik required patience, when Aaliyah arrived and shifted the emotional balance, Marcus responded the only way he knew how. He removed the problem. Literally. Changing locks is a profoundly symbolic act. It says this space no longer includes you. It's not subtle, it's not temporary, it is final. Marcus told himself a story about this decision, that Maya was unstable, that Malik needed special handling he could not provide, that Beatrice had concerns. Beatrice always had concerns. She had concerns about Maya's tone, about her posture, about how she held the baby, about how she breathed in rooms that Beatrice technically owned emotionally. Beatrice believed Maya had failed, as a wife, as a mother, as an acceptable extension of the Thorne family brand. So when Maya was removed, Beatrice felt relieved, not guilty, relieved, which is perhaps the most dangerous emotional response of all. After the court ruling, Marcus told people he had been blindsided. This is a common reaction among people who ignore warnings. He claimed he never expected Elijah to fight back, which says more about Marcus than Elijah. Because Elijah did not fight back with anger, he fought back with patience. After the ruling, life became quieter for Marcus, not calmer, just smaller. Legal consequences have a way of shrinking social circles. Friends stopped calling. Conversations ended earlier. People suddenly remembered other plans. Beatrice responded by becoming sharper, not reflective, sharper. She blamed Maya, she blamed Elijah, she blamed the judge, she blamed how things are these days. She did not blame Marcus, which, again, tells you everything. Meanwhile, Maya was doing something revolutionary. She was healing slowly. Therapy sessions did not fix everything. They did not erase fear. They did not magically restore trust. But they did something better. They gave her language. Language for manipulation. Language for gaslighting. Language for the quiet erosion of self-worth that happens when someone tells you long enough that you are difficult. Malik responded to stability in the way children often do. Gradually, cautiously. He slept better. He flinched less. He smiled more often, but only when he felt safe. Which is to say, he smiled honestly. Aaliyah grew, unaware of the battle that had surrounded her earliest days, which was the point. Elijah visited often, not as a savior, but as furniture, always there, unmoving, reliable. He cooked simple meals, he fixed small things around the apartment, he learned Malik's routines. Routine is sacred to children like Malik. Predictability is comfort. Elijah learned this without complaint. And sometimes, late at night, he sat alone and thought about how easily everything could have gone differently. If he had insisted on paperwork, if he had stayed involved, if he had not let pride masquerade as principle. But regret, like history, does not move backward. So Elijah did what historians recommend. He documented. He kept copies of everything, letters, receipts, court documents, not out of bitterness, but because memory fades and paper does not. Marcus attempted one final maneuver. He requested reduced financial responsibility, citing stress, citing misunderstanding, citing emotional hardship. The court was unmoved. Stress, it turns out, is not an exemption clause. Beatrice's social standing shifted subtly. People still invited her to things, but they listened differently, with distance, with caution. Reputations rarely collapse. They thin, and that thinning is often permanent. Maya found work again, part-time at first, then gradually more. Confidence does not return all at once. It creeps back, in moments where you realize you handled something difficult without apologizing for existing. Elijah watched this transformation quietly, proud but restrained. He had learned something important. Love that demands control is not love, and help that comes without boundaries is not help. Tonight's story does not end with triumph. It ends with maintenance, with routines, with therapy appointments, with school meetings, with a family learning how to exist without fear, which, historically speaking, is rarer than crowns. So take another breath. Let the noise fade, because up next, we drift into what happens after justice, and how rebuilding, strangely enough, is often the hardest part of all. Part 3. All right, let's drift back in. If you've adjusted your blanket again, that's normal. History and healing both take a while to settle. After the court ruling, there was no parade, no celebratory dinner with speeches, no triumphant music swelling in the background. There was paperwork. Lots of it. This is the part of justice no one makes movies about. The follow-up forms, the compliance letters, the very polite envelopes that all say, in slightly different fonts, "This is not optional." Elijah handled these with the calm focus of a man who had learned the hard way. He read everything twice, sometimes 3 times. Not because he enjoyed it, but because he no longer trusted good intentions to protect anyone. Maya was tired in a new way now. Not the frantic exhaustion of survival, but the slow fatigue of rebuilding. This kind of tired does not come from fear. It comes from effort. She woke early, prepared Malik for his day, fed Aaliyah, reviewed therapy schedules. The rhythm was steady, predictable, and for the first time in years, that predictability felt like safety rather than stagnation. Malik's world continued to shrink in the healthiest possible way. Fewer unknowns, fewer surprises. He learned that mornings meant breakfast, then shoes, then school. He learned that evenings meant dinner, then quiet play, then sleep. These patterns anchored him. Children like Malik do not need excitement. They need consistency, which is inconvenient for adults who confuse chaos with vitality. Marcus, meanwhile, experienced the opposite transformation. His world expanded suddenly in ways he did not want. He had obligations now, financial ones, legal ones, responsibilities he had assumed would simply vanish once Maya disappeared from his daily life. This misunderstanding was at the heart of Marcus's problem. He believed removal equaled resolution. History is filled with people who believed this. They are rarely remembered kindly. Marcus still told his version of events to anyone who would listen, but fewer people listened now. His story did not change, which was part of the problem. Stories that do not evolve tend to reveal their weaknesses over time. Beatrice became more vocal, which did not help. She complained about courts, about society, about how men were treated unfairly. She did not mention the grandchildren she had separated from their mother. Selective memory is a powerful anesthetic. Elijah observed all of this from a distance, not smugly, not angrily, with the detached curiosity of someone who had finally stepped out of the storm. He did not reach out to Marcus. He did not seek apologies. He had learned that accountability and remorse rarely arrive together. Instead, Elijah focused on presence. He attended Malik's appointments when invited. He learned the names of therapists. He learned the difference between helpful support and hovering. This took practice. Parents often struggle to step back. Grandparents struggle even more. But Elijah remembered what had gone wrong before. Too much control, too many assumptions. So he asked questions instead of giving orders. Maya noticed this, quietly. Trust does not announce its return. It shows up in small permissions. Leaving Malik with Elijah for an afternoon, asking his opinion, accepting help without bracing for conditions. These moments mattered more than apologies ever could. At night, when the apartment was quiet, Maya sometimes thought about the past, about how easily love had turned into obligation, about how slowly she had learned to question it. She did not romanticize the struggle. She did not call it growth. She called it survival. And survival, as it turns out, builds wisdom, whether you want it or not. Elijah, too, reflected, often alone, often with a cup of coffee he forgot to drink. He thought about his late wife, about the letter she had written years before, the one that said, simply, "If they ever misuse this money, fight for her." He had honored that request, late but fully. There is a specific kind of peace that comes from keeping a promise to someone who is no longer there to see it. Weeks passed, then months. Life did not become easier, it became steadier, which is a different kind of victory. Marcus eventually stopped filing motions, not because he understood, but because resistance is tiring when it no longer yields results. Beatrice redirected her energy into other grievances, new injustices, new enemies. Some people cannot exist without opposition. Maya continued therapy, not to fix herself, but to understand herself. This distinction mattered. Postpartum depression was no longer a weapon used against her. It was something she acknowledged, managed. She learned that needing help did not disqualify her from motherhood. It qualified her for honesty. Malik learned to name his emotions, slowly. Fear, overwhelm, comfort. These words gave him tools. Tools are power. Aaliyah learned to crawl, then stand, then laugh, unburdened by memory, as children should be. Elijah watched all of this with quiet gratitude, not because everything was perfect, but because it was real. Tonight's story does not offer a moral in bold letters. It offers something better, a pattern. When control is challenged by patience, when manipulation meets documentation, when cruelty collides with consistency, the quiet things tend to win. So let yourself rest here for a moment, in this space after conflict, because next we will drift into the long-term consequences, the kind that unfold slowly, almost invisibly, the kind history loves the most. Part 4. The Long Shadow of Consequences. All right, settle back in. If your thoughts wandered a bit, that's fine. This part moves slowly on purpose. History rarely ends at the verdict. It lingers. It stretches itself thin across years. And the consequences of decisions, especially quiet legal ones, tend to arrive without drama, just presence. For Elijah Stovall, consequence arrived as routine. Every morning began the same way. Coffee. A pause by the window. A mental checklist that no longer involved court dates or emergency plans. This was unfamiliar territory. When a crisis ends, the absence of urgency can feel like loss. Your body doesn't trust the silence. Elijah had spent so long bracing for the next problem that peace felt suspicious. So he filled the time with usefulness. He learned to cook meals Malik could tolerate. Texture mattered, smell mattered, predictability mattered most of all. He kept notes, not obsessive ones, practical ones. Which foods worked, which sounds did not, which routines soothed. This was not control. This was care. Maya noticed the difference. So did Malik. Children like Malik do not respond to authority. They respond to safety. And Elijah, for all his past mistakes, had learned how to be safe. Meanwhile, Marcus Thorne was learning a different lesson, one with fewer rewards. The compensation payments arrived on schedule, because courts are very good at reminders. Each payment was a small erosion of the life Marcus thought he deserved. Not dramatic, just steady. He had to budget now, which offended him deeply. He had to explain things, which irritated him even more. He began to resent the condo, the same condo that had once symbolized success. Symbols, it turns out, age poorly. Beatrice framed the situation as persecution. She always did. She told friends that Marcus had been manipulated, that Maya was unstable, that Elijah was vindictive. These explanations worked less and less over time, not because people confronted her, but because they learned to change the subject. Social exile is rarely announced. It's implied. Maya's world, by contrast, grew slowly outward. She returned to work, not for identity, for stability. She built a schedule around Malik's needs, which meant saying no to opportunities that looked good on paper. This was a new kind of maturity, the kind that values peace over appearance. She found a small community, other parents, other caregivers, people who did not ask why Malik needed extra time. They already knew. Shared understanding reduces explanation. Explanation is exhausting. Therapy continued, not always comfortably. Healing does not move in straight lines. Some weeks felt like setbacks, others felt like breakthroughs. Most felt like maintenance. This is the part no one prepares you for, when improvement becomes ordinary. Malik's progress was subtle but undeniable. He tolerated more sound, more people, more unpredictability. He still needed space, still needed warning, but fear no longer dominated his days. Aaliyah learned to walk, unsteadily, joyfully. She fell often, she laughed anyway. Elijah watched her with a strange mix of pride and melancholy. Every milestone was a reminder of how close she had come to being raised without her mother. This thought never left him. At night, when the apartment was quiet, Elijah sometimes replayed that night at the gas station. The van, the exhaustion, the realization. Some memories do not fade. They recalibrate. He no longer saw himself as the hero of the story, nor the villain, just a participant, capable of harm, capable of repair. Marcus attempted contact once, a message, carefully worded. It did not include an apology. Maya did not respond. Silence, when chosen freely, is not avoidance. It is boundary. Beatrice took this as confirmation of disrespect, which was technically correct, but respect is not owed where safety was denied. Over time, Marcus's anger dulled into something less combustible: resentment. Resentment is quieter, but it lasts longer. He blamed the system, he blamed Maya, he blamed his mother occasionally in fleeting moments of clarity, but blame without accountability goes nowhere. Elijah, meanwhile, downsized further, not out of loss, but out of intention. He no longer needed space to store regrets. He needed space to show up. And so he did, consistently. School events, appointments, ordinary afternoons. History rarely records these moments, but they are where outcomes are decided. Tonight's story, like most real ones, is not about triumph. It's about endurance, the kind that doesn't announce itself, the kind that builds quietly, day by day. So let yourself rest here, in this long middle stretch, because next we'll drift into something even subtler, the way memory reshapes itself once survival is no longer the goal.